The first item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
There are no public comments.
Perfect. Then let's move to item number 3, action item. We have one action item, and that is approve the minutes for the February 2nd legislative meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
I have a motion by Robinson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Gina, thank you so much. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is our information items. And we've got state legislative update by Ron Pierce. Welcome, Ron.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. Day 51 from Tallahassee, so we're starting to bring it in for a landing up here. Session is scheduled to end next Friday, March the 11th. I think I have some good news on some of the things that we've been working on your behalf up here. Number one, with regards to restoring the transportation disadvantage, the Innovative Service Development Funds. Those funds, the budget conference started on Monday here in Tallahassee, so the House and Senate have started the budget conference. And I'm happy to report that the House and Senate have both already closed out the $6 million in grant programs for that pot of money. So on our agenda for that issue, for the transportation disadvantage, innovative service funds, those have been restored, which is really good news because from a late shift program standpoint, that will allow us to be able to fund that through those dollars again, which is fantastic. If you all will recall, there was $10 million as a part of the corridors bill that was for the transportation disadvantage program. What us and other transit organizations are pushing for is to restore the $6 million, which is done, but take the remaining $4 million from that pot and put it to the overall pot of money for the formula, which right now the House and Senate has it at $51 million for transportation disadvantage. We're trying to get that bumped up to $55 million. Been a little bit of pushback about how to use those dollars from a couple different groups. And I think one of the compromises may be, at least for this year, is to go to the $55 million and figure out how to spend that additional $4 million in the future. So I know that we're working closely with Lisa and the association about trying to get it up to $55 million. And I've been talking to Brad and the team about it. So that's something we're working on as well. So, but the good news is the $6 million for the Innovative Grant Program has been restored. I do think we'll get the $4 million added to the overall $51 million budget as well. I think that will happen probably the next couple of days up here during budget conference. With regards to electric vehicles and the VW settlement dollars, I think Brad, I don't know how long we've been working on this with you. I think for almost 2 years, we've been having conversations with DEP about using those dollars, not only electric school buses, but give also the opportunity to be able to have folks bid for transit electric buses as well. And again, I'm really happy to report that DEP actually released, I think earlier this week officially, that they are now accepting grant applications for electric buses for transit organizations. They can apply for those. And I believe the total pot of money that is initially available is $59 million, which is that is really good news for us as an organization. State transportation funding flexibility, I'll touch on two things. Number one, Senate Bill 398. There is some flexibility in there from not only from a assist funding standpoint, but more importantly is they're putting some kind of minimums and maximums on the dollars that they want spent out of the Transportation Trust Fund, spent on public transportation projects and transit projects. They put a minimum of at least 15% of those funds, a maximum of 25%. We had some board members in Tallahassee a couple weeks ago. We went around. That's something we definitely support to make sure that additional dollars are going into transit projects out of the Transportation Trust Fund. Let me touch briefly on Rule 1490. That's a transit rule, as you all know, that prevents us from using specific dollars besides transportation disadvantaged dollars on working with TNCs on transit projects. Brad and us and a couple other groups, including Uber, by the way, have been working on an amendment to include in 398, Senate Bill 398. That amendment's not going to get in. However, and I'll let Brad jump in here in a minute, is I think by us having language floating out there and having some conversations with the House, the Senate, with House leadership and Senate leadership, I think DOT is going to hopefully beginning to expedite the rulemaking process in 1490. And hopefully we've been told, and Brad, I'll let you kind of chime in. I believe that could be in place, sometime later. I think they want to try to get it in place by July. We're being told that some of the things that are part of that new rule, I think would be very beneficial to PSTA with regards to how we're funding some of our TNC projects moving forward. So, Brad, did you want to highlight anything on 1490? I think you had a conversation with DOT, I think last Friday, and you and I have been having a couple emails back and forth as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ron, on that. We've been working on updating the rule that basically governs everything that we do from the state perspective that was created in 1987 to allow us to be able to use state dollars, basically have the flexibility to use state dollars that come into our budget for all of the access programs that we do with TNCs like Uber and Lyft, which right now they say we cannot. And we have to do all these accounting mechanisms to make sure we separate any state dollars from touching what is a growing part of our mix of transportation services in Pinellas. So thank you to Ron and Senator Hooper and working with him and the lawyers at Uber and our own lawyers to working on some legislation that would allow this, that then, as you say, Ron, maybe has spurred on a little activity from the DOT to get this thing across the finish line. Now, we'll see. I haven't seen, they were in my offices here at PSTA last Friday begging kind of to take that legislation out and promising me that they were going to get the rulemaking done and this was going to be in effect by July 1. We'll see. Just keep a copy of that legislation, Ron, in case we're here March of 2023 and we have to do it again. That's all I have to say.
I've already filed it away, Brad, just in case we need it in the future. And to your point, we're still continuing to have conversations with folks up here to ensure that DOT doesn't lose sight that we're trying to get that in place by July 1. Yes, we've got funding for the late shift program and other, for other potential programs with TNCs, but we also want more flexibility in the future as well. So, the short term it's solved. After July 1, we want flexibility on that as well. So, no, absolutely, we'll make sure we have that handy if needed. The only other update I have is if you look at our agenda, I think we've had, I think we've had a lot of success. The only thing that I think is going to be kind of an off-season, issue we're going to work on is continuing to have conversations on funding with regards to Medicaid transportation trips. That's something that, my goal is to have the ACA secretary and Brad meet over the summer. We had some really good conversations pre-COVID. We've had a couple of secretaries since then. So trying to get the new secretary of ACA and her team to come to Pinellas County, have a conversation with our team about how we're paying for a lot of these trips that should be being paid from Medicaid. So with their Medicaid eligible trips, if there's a way for us to get reimbursed for that. So we'll continue to have that conversation, but I don't think it'll be something that will be solved this year in Tallahassee, but I think we'll work with the department and the agency to try to solve it in the off season. And I'll stop there from a budget standpoint. Again, budget conference started on Monday. We expect probably the subcommittees to wrap up on probably Thursday, maybe Friday at the latest. Big chairs, which means the two respective chairs of the Appropriations Committee, as well as presiding officers, will probably get any issues bumped to them over the weekend. We expect the final budget to come in for a landing probably on Monday. We do expect to be done on time. The only thing they have to get done is a budget. But if you look at the budget, and a lot of legislation is moving, I think right now we're definitely on track to get done on March the 11th. The only issue right now that's really hanging out there, that's going to be a big political football for them to deal with, is the congressional maps. And, the House kind of dealt with that a little bit on Friday. We'll see where they land when it comes off the House floor. But then at that point, the House and Senate are going to have to conference those maps. So that's the only thing you're starting to lose. You're getting a little bit, tight on time because you have to, try to come up with maps by March the 11th. Obviously, there's always a chance if they had to, they could come back to a special session, but it's an election year. I don't think they want to be in Tallahassee after March 11th, so I wouldn't be surprised if some version of maps do get done by March the 11th. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to answer questions on kind of where we are from a budget standpoint or anything specific that may be on our agenda as well.
Thank you, Ron. Are there any questions, guys? All right, no questions. Brad, you have any more comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you, Ron, very much for all your work. And I want to thank Chair Saraki and Commissioner Robinson, Commissioner Gao, Chair Gerard, and all the PSDA folks who helped out with this. I mean, this is like probably the best, most successful, knock on wood, it's not over yet, so I guess.
Yeah,
Maybe I shouldn't say anything.
yeah.
Until March 11th. But the transportation disadvantage thing and the VW settlement right on our list, and then maybe number 2 on 1490 is also, there's movement on it at least. That's a big accomplishment. I did have one question, Ron. Maybe it's kind of gone by the wayside, or maybe if you've seen it, you know, we had some discussions on number 1, on the transportation disadvantage, $6 million coming back into the budget to be able to fund our TD late shift program and others. There was discussion by the governor's office putting some restrictions on like how much any one county could get, and then the if it was a regional project that crossed county lines, how much that could get. Has that been memorialized at all? Do you know anything about that?
It hasn't been yet. I need a lot of check on that, Brad. I know the dollars are obviously there, but proviso is not done yet. So I'll make sure when the proviso comes out as a part of that, we'll stay on top of that to make sure that, I know that's something that the Transportation Disadvantage Commission, the governor's office was pushing, but as of right now, that has not been addressed. So that's kind of an open item. So we'll stay on top of that as proviso starts popping out. And it may be something they're trying to do behind the scenes as well. So I'll check with Chris Spencer in the governor's office. I know when we met with him, Brad, a couple of weeks ago, I'll kind of reiterate that the importance of not having a cap in there. You know, we would prefer not to have a cap. So I'll talk to them, and more importantly, I'll watch for the proviso, which will be coming out over the next 2 to 3 days probably.
Yeah, thank you. I think, you know, the Commission for Transportation Disadvantage has been actually very collaborative with PSDA and the whole Tampa Bay region. They've had several Zoom calls with us. I talked to them when we were in Tallahassee, and it looks like the game plan will be to meet, as long as we can meet these these prior caps on the regional project, that PSDA might be the lead agency for the region on applying for our TD late shift program, which will just be in Pinellas. In Hillsborough County, HART is not the entity that runs their transportation disadvantage. Hillsborough County runs it, and they want to apply for like weekend extra trips, and then this regional program, which is the thing that got cut, that connected all the counties together, we would put that in there in a combined application that met all the governor's caps and all that. Seems like that's the game plan that the region and the Commission for Transportation Disadvantage endorsed. Is that, yeah, like one kind of like Tampa Bay wide package of programs, even though they would be kind of like different county by county kind of things. It seemed like it was much more collaborative than in the past. So that was a big positive on that. And then the VW settlement was like possibly the greatest meeting I've ever, you know, with a bureaucratic person in one of those offices in Tallahassee I've ever gone to, where the guy was like, yeah, like here's an $18 million check or something. It was almost like that.
Yeah, it was literally almost a check presentation. I thought they were about to pull out a check in his hand it to Brad, so.
I know. Well, you guys have been there with me, like, that just never happens. Like, he was like super positive, so thank you. Look forward to having you back here in Tampa Bay and getting past March 11th.
All right, Ron, you know, I just wanted to have one quick comment. I had the opportunity to come to Tallahassee and work with you, with Brad, and that was probably one of the greatest learning experiences that I ever had in Tallahassee, especially like Brad just mentioned, going to Department of Transportation, the meeting with the VW funds. Like Brad said, it was a very positive meeting. I just want to say thank you so much, Ron, for all you do for the PSTA. I think you do a wonderful job, and I had a great honor to work with you this past session, and as chairman, I am honored to say thank you so much. And with that, I think we're good. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Ron. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ron.
All right, we're gonna move on, team, to item B4, federal legislative update. Henry Glenn is not here, so he will not be attending the meeting today. So then we're gonna move right on to item number 5, other business. Does anybody like to share any other business, what's going on in their cities? Nothing.
Mr. Chair, if I could just say a few things with the federal.
Sure. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have Harry with us today because he called me right before the meeting to say he's dealing with a family kind of emergency. So he did tell me some bad news, or at least typical news from Washington, D.C. Priority number 3 on our federal list there, approve the 2022 appropriation for, the budget by the end of 2021, when their fiscal year started on October 1st. They been doing continuing resolutions because they can't reach a deal. And then the latest continuing resolution went to March 11th, and a week ago, Harry was very optimistic, and then he was just pessimistic on the phone this morning, thinking there was some kind of other glitch, and so they might need a couple more weeks of extension on that March 11th date again. And this is not atypical. This seems to happen all the time up there, but it does have an effect on us because the formula grants, which are substantially increased due to the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is number 2, not all of that can be appropriated, not all of that can be doled out to PSDA and all the other cities until they approve the appropriation. I haven't heard anything about, there's no problem with really, I don't think it's even a transportation issue that is causing the holdup, but yeah, it's kind of holding up. We've already put the order in for the electric buses, and we're counting on the appropriation coming through, hopefully by a year from now, when the buses, when the bill comes from Gillig. I guess that's the biggest concern on that. But the RAISE grant, the next RAISE grant, as I mentioned on the webinar with Congressman Christ, it's now due on April 14th. So we're working really hard on that, getting letters of support for a successful this go-round RAISE grant. And I did want to also just mention thank you to Commissioner Robinson for joining me on that panel with Congressman Chris, because I think that's can't hurt and might help. I think it helped to have a number of PSDA members and county commissioners there to know. Harry told me that the county, again, he's pretty sure is not going to compete with us on our RAISE grant application, so we'll be the only RAISE grant, and they'll support our RAISE grant for the Clearwater Transit Center, so maybe that was caused by that webinar thing. Yeah, so I thought that was a very good positive thing, just to communicate with the local folks just as much as the folks in DC. The guy, the Deputy Secretary of Transportation that was on that Zoom call is one of the key guys that evaluates the projects and makes recommendations to the Secretary to approve. So, as Commissioner Albritton said to me yesterday when I was in Clearwater, he was like, Brad, we just got to make sure that they know that Clearwater is not Tampa, and that it's not in the Panhandle where we are. which I think, I agree with them, and I think that having those webinars or Zoom, things like that, just makes us more known up there. It's a big plus. So, not as totally outstanding success on our federal process so far, but we're working on it. We're gonna go up to Washington DC in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now to the APTA Legislative Conference, which is being held in DC, and then Commissioner Flowers is gonna be coming up with me to advocate on behalf of the Clearwater Transit Center. Unfortunately, it is Election Day, is when we're gonna be there, and Commissioner Albritton is on the ballot, so he's not able to come. But I think we'll have some good meetings. We're gonna meet with the DOT, all those folks, remind them that we are from Clearwater, and where Clearwater is on the map, and we have a desperately needed project. So we'll see how that goes, but I'm looking forward to that.
All right. All right, Brad, thank you for that
Yeah.
federal update. Great job. Anything else? All right, team.
Just real quick.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Brad as well for your expertise on that call. I felt kind of a little outmatched. I was there with the, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Congressional Affairs and who's an expert on the infrastructure law, and then Brad, who's obviously an expert on Pinellas transportation, and then me, who is not an expert in anything. But
That's not true.
so but you guys did a great job. I thought it was a great opportunity to learn a lot more about the infrastructure law. And Brad, you did a great job of presenting some of the issues and matters that we have going on here in Pinellas County. So thank you guys very much for that.
Great job, Jamie. And
Yeah, great.
I love being on that Zoom call. I'm glad you guys put that together. It was very informative, and I learned a lot. Great job. All right, everyone. I guess that's it. We are adjourned.
Thank you. You just go ahead and hit that thing.
I loved it.
Way to go.
Yeah, that was great.
Just been waiting to
Gina,
strike
thanks
it
for
out.
coming.
I'm on the committee, why wouldn't I?
You're the best.
Although, there was the lady at the end of the Zoom call from the city of St. Petersburg.
She had a lot of questions.
She had a lot of questions, yeah.
Good job there.
And I didn't know the answers to her questions. I